As we know, it's a lot of hoods in New York City. And some of those hoods are notorious. And we gonna learn the histories of some of these hoods on this channel. You will never find content like this on any channel on YouTube. We different over here. You want that real New York history, that real Brooklyn history. It's here. You know they hate me because they think I got a monopoly on the game. But I just work harder. While they sleeping, I'm in the gym shooting. And that's why they mad. LAZ. Brooklyn Legacy, baby. I'm back on this grind.
Back then, we knew we was going to prison, right? And we was looking forward to that day that we went to prison because our mentality was, yeah, we gonna go to jail, we gonna bust our guns in jail the same way we busting our guns in the streets, we gonna build our reputation, everybody gonna know about us, we gonna wear all our jewelry and our shine, we ain't never, taking no shorts and all that. So because all of the dudes that came before me, that came home from prison, that used to sit down in the hoods with us and tell us those war stories about up top, that intrigued us so much to the point where we was like, oh, no, we could do that. We could live in jail. We could, we put some. See, that was the thing too, bro. Like, falling by the wayside meant if you was a dog in the street, right, and then you went to jail and you was pussy in jail, nah, bro, that wasn't flying. That's not how it's supposed to go. So we was like standing on everything, meaning, however, if we was putting in work in the streets and thugging and doing whatever we was doing in the streets, and when we got behind that wall, no matter what wall it was, fucking Rikers Island, skin joints are up top in the mountains, feds, whatever, we was carrying that same energy and we was going to put on behind the wall the same way that we put on in the streets. Bro, we used to sit down on the bench in Sumner Projects and talk about how when we went to jail, how we was going to run shit. It's crazy. It's sad.
You talking about adolescent days, like talking about C-74?
Yeah, I'm talking about because when we was having these conversations, we were adolescents. We weren't adults. We weren't of the age to be placed in adult facilities. We were still under the age of 18.
So what happened? What happened? How you ended up in C-74 for your first time ever?
So my first joint, the first time I went to C-74, involved like a situation that, that's a type of man down type of situation that we gonna have to leave over there. But it transcended from actually that's not correct, because that situation where they tried to put that on me, that wasn't even a C-74 situation. That might have been a Spofford situation leading up to C-74, but I remember the first time I went to C-74 was for robberies, right? So you from Brooklyn, so I'm not quite sure, you're a little younger, so I'm not quite sure if you're familiar with the phrase that a Brooklyn's person back in them days, a Brooklyn's person's first love and their first introduction into the street game was through robberies. So my first introduction into real crime, not the little kitty petty shit, but the real crime was like robberies, pulling out that stick, putting it in their face, and, and taking what they had, or, so that was my first introduction to crime on the bigger stage, where I got pinched and ended up at C-74 and then getting bailed out. Right.
Where you caught that robbery at though? Around Sumner?
Everything was around Sumner, bro, because that was where I was from. So when we were young, we didn't have cars at that time unless we were stealing them. And we were stealing cars to go put that work in. But we didn't have cars at that time, so everything was on foot patrol. That's what we called it back then, foot patrol. We would arm up and go on foot patrol through various neighborhoods within walking and running distance, because you always wanted to, back then we was young, so we had a lot of energy and endurance, so we always wanted to not stray too far from where we thought we couldn't outrun the police. You know what I mean? If the police got on our ass, we wanted to be able to take the foot chase and get away. So my first joint was actually it was on Grand Avenue. Actually, yeah, we ran up in the sneaker store and backed the whole sneaker store down and robbed the whole joint. You know what I mean? Had the open sign in it, walked in there, turned the open sign to the closed sign, and actually a couple of motherfuckers was trying to walk in the store, but we walked in, backed out the hammer, pushed them out, excuse me, turned the sign from open to closed, like they closed right now. And then we did what we did. That was some wild, reckless shit, bro. To think of some of the shit that we did and the audacity in which we did those things was...
Did dudes get the money, though?
The money, listen, homie, we took not only did we get the money, we got the money, the cash register, and fucking red sneakers. You know what I mean? Because it was a sneaker store. So we went in there, you know, to rob the establishment of the money, everything that the people had in there, the workers or whatever, and sneakers. Yo, homie, go back in there and get me such and such and such and such in a size, whatever, because there was a few of us, about 6 or 7 of us, and we all got the sizes and all that, and we walked about that bitch with the sneakers, the shoes, the money out the register, and all sorts of shit, and kept it pushing. And the wild shit was, so you never know who you know, who might know you, who might recognize you, right? So at that time, I think I was probably going to Eastern District High School, or yeah, I think I was going to Eastern District High School, because the way I got pinched was that it was a black cat inside that store, and the cat that was inside that store went to high school with me. In the early part, he went to Eastern District with me, and he told, I guess once we left, he told the store owners, his bosses, whatever, that, yo, I know that dude, whatever his name is now, he's from over there, such and such. He went to school with me, and then that was how they eventually, you know, once they get that information, it's just a process of, you know, whatever the police do during their investigation before they eventually catch up to you.
Yeah, I heard Eastern District was out of control back in the days.
Eastern District was all the way out of control, and this was back, you know, this was back in the early 80s, and this is where, you know what I mean, I met. So back then, it was, when we was in our Eastern District days running around and doing our crimes and shit, it was, remember I told you I'm from Sumner, and in the close proximity was Sumner, Tompkins across the street, and then across the street from Tompkins, down the block is Marcy. So there was a lot of Sumner, Tompkins, Marcy dudes in Eastern District, as well as, you know, Williamsburg, Old Lincoln, Cooper Projects, and the like. So at that time, this was around the time when Sumner and Sumner, Tompkins, and Marcy was we was all together. We was all running around together. And that's how, you know what I mean, we get the stories with the little homie Shoe in there and the little homie Tilo. You know what I mean? God bless the dead Tilo. God bless the dead homie Shoe too. So, you know, all those stories, that's where we all came up together, where we got together and started formulating bonds and run around on crime sprees. We used to run, you know, back then it was a thing at that time where dudes was robbing trains, like whole trains. Like you get on a train and rob the whole train from the first car all the way down to the last car. And that's the double G train, the GG train. And we did a lot of terrorizing on that double G train. A lot of young, ignorant minded stuff, man. You're making bones and you're trying to figure out, ways to come up and shit. And, and like I said, a Brooklyn person's first law of coming up when I was coming up was robbery, bro. Robbery with the razor, robbery with the knife, it was robbery.
Yeah, like, we spoke about this before on the channel, like what a lot of people don't know is that, like uptown, drugs may be a trade that they use to get money, but in Brooklyn, the common trade is robbery. So it's like you in Brooklyn, you kind of taught to rob at a young age, and it's not even nothing personal. It's a straight trade, like getting an electric certificate or a floor covering certificate. Dudes be learning how to rob in Brooklyn at a young age.
So, Brooklyn borders Queens, Queens borders Brooklyn. We're in close proximity to each other the same way as Manhattan and the Bronx are in close proximity to each other. So the way Brooklyn was they used to always call us the grimy dudes and all that. You can't trust Brooklyn cats because they turn on you, rob you, whatever. The Queens dudes was into the trade, drug trade, getting money, like the cats and all of them dudes, Fat Cat and all them teams. So Queens was getting money, Brooklyn was doing robberies, Manhattan was getting money, and then the Bronx dudes was like us. So to me, the Bronx dudes was more like Brooklyn dudes with respect to how they was giving it up and their means of going after getting money. You hear about some of the stories of some of the Bronx legends. They too came up from busting a gun and taking shit from people, whereas a lot of the Queens cats probably before the drug trade blew up so much, maybe robberies might have been their forte, but Queens was getting money on the trade. Manhattan was getting money on the trade. Bronx was doing their thing as far as taking shit, from what I knew, but Brooklyn dudes just grew up robbing shit. All the older dudes before us taught us to rob, like you said, by telling us the story. It's not like they necessarily took us by our hand, put a gun in our joint and said, yo, here, go do this. Nah, what they did was they told us those war stories. And then, we hearing that shit like, oh shit, that's how you get money? All right, cool. Let me get a gun. I remember how I, scraped up my little ones to buy my first gun. And I felt like once I got that first gun, I was taking over the world. I felt invincible. That was the ignorance of youth. But, in Brooklyn, we felt we needed guns. So when we got guns, we would take our guns and look for other motherfuckers that we thought had guns to rob them for their guns. Because, what the gun is, whoever get it out first. You know what I mean? You could be a mad gun buster or whatever, but if the other man got the draw on you, there's nothing you could do. So we used to practice getting the draw on people first. That way you get, the story about dudes from Sumner was knocking police out and taking hammers, or it wasn't just that, backing out hammers and taking hammers. That's what we was famous for. When we was coming up, we was taking your gun. If we knew you had a gun, we was taking that. If you was slipping, we was taking your gun. Funny story. Here's a funny story before I stop and go through what I gotta do. Funny story was in the midst of of us coming up and doing our shit. We, like I said, we down in Sumner, so Fort Greene and Farragut, close to each other in proximity. My man Tracy, he wasn't my man initially when we first met, but my man Tracy, God bless his dead, from out of Farragut, Tracy Washington, got a brother named Dawn, a brother named Squirrel. My man, now I could call him my man because we got tight before he passed. But he was down in my projects with one of my old heads, and I think he was with this cat named Crime or somebody else. But long story short, I was with my homie, my Cody Hash, and so back then it was, all right, if you came down to the hood, right, to see somebody, the person that you came to see, if you wasn't from our hood, had to have been of some sort of status or held some sort of status so that they would prevent other dudes from trying to get at, outsiders, because that's the way it is. Outsiders don't like, people from hoods don't like outsiders coming to their hoods. So if dudes come in your hood, the first thing you do is scheming on them. So Tracy and I think it was Carl, I don't know, but Tracy and whoever he was with, Tracy Washington, he was coming through the P's, and me and Hash was walking through the P's at the same time, and Tracy was with he was going to holler at one of my older heads. So now we see them, they see us. So we like, oh shit, who the fuck is them? New dudes. They was kind of flying all that little chain and all that. So we sat. So now imagine this, like we saddle up next to them. So it's let's say it's me on the far right. Let's say it's Hash on my closest left. So Hash's closest left, which would have been Tracy's right, was Tracy, and then it was the little dude that Tracy was with. So now we side by side. Imagine 4 dudes walking side by side, right? And we everybody got their hand on their waist. Everybody holding the joint. So because they was on point. Tracy was a street dude. He was hip to the game. He knew how we was giving up. And Sumner, if he didn't know us per se, he heard about dudes from Sumner. He knew how they played, so he was on point. So he had his hand on his gat. The little dude with him was reaching. Me and Hash had our hand on our joints, and we all walking slow, right? So we trying to walk slow so they could get in front of us a little bit so we could back out. He was not. I love Tracy, man. Rest in peace, that's my little homie. He was not having it. He was on point. Every time we slowed up, he slowed up. So we slowed up so much now that the person that Tracy and them was coming to see, my older head that was in front of us, he didn't even realize that we was falling in the back behind him about to go at it with each other because he wasn't paying no attention. He walking and he's still talking, thinking he talking to us. Behind him, he turns around. This was the funniest shit. He turns around and sees us at least several paces behind him, and he immediately peeped what was going on. So he turned back around, continued to walk, and I guess he thought about it, and he kind of like turned around and then came back towards all of us and kind of like put himself in the middle. He didn't say no words like, yo, chill, and nah, be easy. He didn't say none of that. He just put himself in the center of us and like kind of like diffuse the situation because nobody was going to shoot or do nothing through him. So he put himself in the mix and talked to them. And it's like, yo, man, I'm going to get up with y'all later when I come down to Fort Greene or whatever. And he told them to bounce. And he kept us there with him while they bounced. So that was like, you know what I mean, an interesting little situation that we had with the homie. And I didn't even know who he was. But my homie told us, like, yo, nah, son, we was like, yo, boy, what you doing? We was about to get them niggas. He's like, nah, y'all wasn't about to get them niggas. Y'all would have had to kill them or they was going to kill y'all because everybody had their hand on their joint and they was on point. And that's my son from down to such and such. And we was like, oh, damn, bro, we didn't know. You ain't tell us. You know, dudes just come in the hood. We all robbing everything. So, you know, that's how that shit went. And it was a lot of so that story, I told you that story to tell you, to give you insight how dudes first met. So a lot of times, a lot of the dudes from Brooklyn that was heavy into the street game and whose name was resonating and they was doing something, they kind of met through controversy at first, and then later on either became cool or ended up becoming mortal enemies and you know, doing whatever they did to each other whenever they got an opportunity to. But some of the closest individuals that I've ever come across and in my life that I maintain a strong relationship and a bond with, that happened through controversy, through us having to go at it with each other, whether it be shootouts and, you know what I mean, and then other dudes intervening, and then we sitting down and realizing that then we might be stronger as a unit as opposed to being apart, going at each other. That's how a lot of same shit with Killer Ben. We'll get to that stuff later. That's another one of my little comrades, my little homies. We didn't start off as friends and as associates, but we ended up that way before his passing. That was one of my main comrades that I would put work in for. At the drop of a hat, everybody knew that. He did the same for me. You know what I mean? So Like, when we talk about some of these stories, homie, it's a lot, bro. It's a lot with this Brooklyn history. A lot of dudes that you know, you might have had on your joint or heard stories about. We were all, again, interconnected and intertwined at some point or period of time and shit, bro.
So when you said you got locked up for that sneaker store robbery, you said you went to the island for the first time, but you bailed out quick?
Yeah. So when I caught the sneaker store robbery, whatever, I don't know how old I was, probably like 15, 16, 17, some shit like that. Went to the Island 4 building. I think I went to Mod 5, whatever the reception house was back then, in the 80s, whatever. I think I went to Mod 5 and shit. So I stayed on the island briefly, like a week, 2. I was able to go to the yard, you know what I mean, see all the homies in the yard. There's a bunch of cats in there at that time, trying to think who was on the island back then when I first went through. I think my little man Huck from Marcy was there. That was the first time I ever seen anybody ride a skateboard and shit. I think they had skateboards in the 4 building, if I'm not mistaken. And I think he was in the yard on a skateboard or some shit. I don't know. He was riding on something in that yard when I first went to that yard in the 4 building. Yeah, so this was around 85, 86. So I think Majesty from my projects was in the 4 building at that time too. Matter of fact, I know Majesty was in the 4 building because we had a conversation about some things. But yeah, so that time that I went to the 4 building and shit, I think I stayed maybe a week or 2. I think I was in Mod 5, if I'm not mistaken. I think Mod 5 might have been I don't know what they called it back then, the New Jack House, or when you first coming through or whatever. So I think I stayed in Mod 5. If not, I went to another population house from there, and then I bailed out and shit. So when I bailed out, you know what I mean, then it was back to that type of business as usual that we was doing in the streets, you know what I mean, running around and all that. So, and I didn't go back to the can until 1986, 87. But by that time, when I went back to the camp for the case that I caught, that I would end up spending a significant time in prison for, I guess I was classified as an adult, and they sent me to the Brooklyn house. I didn't go to Rikers Island. They sent me to the Brooklyn house. They sent all my co-defendants. I had about 5, 6 co-defendants. They sent all my co-defendants to C-74 because I guess they was under the age of 18 or whatever, or 17, whatever the age was. They was under the age of where they could be housed as adults. At they had them C-74 adolescent. I went to the Brooklyn house. I didn't go to the island until like several months after being in the Brooklyn house for a while on a couple different floors. Met a lot of solid dudes. Met a lot of dudes in the Brooklyn house that was heavy in them prison stories. A lot of people prison stories. A lot of cats was in the Brooklyn house.
What years you talking about, like?
Oh, the year I'm talking about that I was in a Brooklyn house, this would have to been in 1987, 86, 87. One of them 2 years, because I had just probably turned like 17 or 18, whatever the year the law was back then that classified you as an adult and shipped you over to where the them grown ass men was. That's how old I was. So that was like I said, that was like 1986, 1987.
It was Brooklyn house wild, or it was laid back compared to the island?
Nothing is wild compared to the island, homie. I mean, prison in and of itself gets wild. It gets crazy in any prison. It doesn't make a difference necessarily where it's located at. It's just the whatever the nature of the individuals that they have incarcerated at that particular prison at the time. And when I was in the Brooklyn house at that time, it was lit. It was wild. It was definitely lit. Who was in there? Who's in there with me back then? Tuck was in there. Tuck from the East, Brownsville, East New York, wherever Tuck was from. Tuck was with me in the Brooklyn house back then. Who else, man? My man Bond. I think that Bond is Squirrel and Tracy, older brother. We was in the Brooklyn house together. I think on the 9th floor. My homies from my hood, Hickey Doo. You know what I mean? We call him Daddy O. My man Hicks and his brother Agard. They was in the Brooklyn house at that time. I think a Law Just was in the Brooklyn house at that time. I know for a fact Law Just was was in the Brooklyn house at that time because we all went to HDM together. Spanish dude named Hound Dog. You'll hear about him in some of my stories moving forward. Hound Dog was a definite influence in my life. We that was an individual that I had a lot of respect for, and I learned a lot of things in the early parts of my bed, young, coming up, fucking with Hound Dog. Matter of fact, with Tut in the Brooklyn house, back in 86, 87, when I was with Tut in the Brooklyn house, Tut was the one that taught me how to work out. When you first go to prison, homie, prison is about, a lot of times dudes, while they're in prison, they get in shape and they stay in shape. They get introduced to, working out. So you have to get introduced to working out from somebody. So the first time I really actually started working out and got introduced to working out, that was with Tut. Yep, that's a whole fact. That was with Tut. He taught me how to do the push-ups with the decks of cards. I don't know if you ever did that with the decks of cards. You got like 2 or 3 decks of cards, and you turn over like 3 cards, and the face cards was worth like 10 or 15 push-ups, and then whatever other the number cards were, that's what did push-ups. So I was frail too back then, lads. I was like only 17, 18. My little frail ass, like, nah, just turn over two cards. You do 2 at a time. I'm like, in my mind, nah, boy, you doing 3. Now, unbeknownst to me, Tuck been doing the jail shit for a minute, so his body was accustomed through that muscle memory of him being able to do those type of workouts, at that level. But, when you're young, you feel like you could do whatever the next person do. Man, I turned over like 3 or 4 cards. I think I got about 3 face cards and a 9 or some shit like that. That'd have been about, what, 15 times 3? It's about 45. Plus, right there, I couldn't do like no 50, 60 piece. So I did about 12 push-ups. My arms started shaking, fell on my face. Tuck was like, listen, bro, you got to gradually build up into this workout shit. You got to work your way into it. You can't just think you could just, knock all them push-ups out at one time and all that. And then we used to go upstairs to the little gym or whatever the fuck they had in the Brooklyn house, whatever it was called, gym yard or whatever. I know it was indoors. They had the little weights or whatever in there. And I didn't get introduced to the weights at that time. Tuck had me doing pull-ups and shit. So we was doing pull-ups. Back then I could only do 3 pull-ups. Lads, that shit was crazy weird. Up there shaking, legs kicking and all that. So that's why I learned about proper form and all that. He was like, nah, homie, none of them shits count. You were supposed to do 5, you did 1.5 clean. The rest of that shit was shaky money. So take about 30 seconds to 60 seconds, get back up there and give clean money. So that's how I learned about, proper form with respect to push-ups and pull-ups and things of that nature. But yeah, the Brooklyn house was interesting. I stayed there for like, I don't know, maybe 3, 4, 5 months. I kept getting into a lot of fights and shit. I didn't get into my razor and my knife game in the Brooklyn house because, I was just coming through, so I didn't have access to that. I didn't even know dudes was really playing with those like that, until I got, schooled by other individuals who was in prison for longer periods of time, and they was basically breaking down the ropes of prison to me and how it went. That was, back then I was Tut and a Hound Dog. Matter of fact, I think we was all on the 5th floor. If I'm not mistaken, me, Tuck, Hound Dog, and myself, and there was a few other cats that was in my house. We was on the 5th floor. I think it was the 5th floor, but you know how the fact checkers will do. They'll check into it, and then, it'll come out. I guess what you said last, leave it in the comments.
Straight up. Leave it in the comments if you know which floor it was.
Right, but that's when that's where I met Hound Dog at, Spanish cat from out of Brooklyn, Puerto Rican dude from out of Brooklyn. Yeah, I think he had like a couple missing fingers or whatever, couple nubs, but he was definitely a beast. He was older, so this is my young mind paying attention to everything, seeing how these dudes is bidding and jailing. This is the first time I had to learn about phone time and fighting for phone. I had to fight for my little 30-minute phone time that dude, that dudes gave me when I came through and shit. So back then, this how it was, right? Back
you
then.
Mean you had to fight somebody that for that 30 minutes, or just fight somebody to prove that you was worthy of the 30 minutes?
No, I'm gonna show you. I'm about to break it down to you exactly how it went back then. So it could have gone several ways. You could fight somebody that has time that you think that don't deserve the time. You could challenge them for their time, fight, knife, razor, whatever, however y'all do it. Y'all get it off for the time. Obviously, the winner is the person that's gonna stay in the house and have the time. But back then, right, in the 80s and in Brooklyn, a lot of times your street reputation carried over with you when you went to the joint. So if you was up and in the street, banging it out, turning it up, putting that work in, laying shit down, whatever phrase you want to use, when you got to the joint, no matter which joint it was, Brooklyn House, Rikers Island, anywhere, 9 times out of 10 or more often than not, you were going to come across somebody that was from your hood or somebody that knew about who you were, if you were repping like that had a phone and that was going to give you some slot time. So when I got to the 5th floor, I don't even remember who was running the phone, but it was an older dude, one of them older dudes, and they question you, where you from. So I guess based upon my answering of the questions, and he like, oh, yo, so you the little dude they call Black Niles from Sumner. I heard about you, shorty. So this is what we gonna do. I'm gonna give you 30 minutes. Boom. But when I give you this 30 minutes, homie, that's your slot time. Meaning you got to hold it down. If you can't hold it down and somebody come in here and take your time, then that's what it is. So I got my little 30 minutes, and some cat, I guess he came in there after me or whatever. He probably looked at me, thought I was sweet. Like, oh, this dude getting on at from 8 to 8:30, whatever, which that's prime slot time back then, whatever. And he, Spanish dude too. And he was like, yo, yeah, I want that time and shit. So he didn't really speak that much English and shit. So he I guess he stepped the hound dog and spoke to hound dog in Spanish. And hound dog came to me in a little day room, I guess, a little / mess hall shit, whatever, because you in the Brooklyn house, you didn't go nowhere to mess halls and all that. You stayed on your floor and got fed on your floor, whatever. So hound dog came up to me like, yo, Nas, listen, man, this dude he wants your slot time. And he want to know what you want to do for your slot time. And I'm like, who? And he pointed out to the dude, whatever, Spanish dude, like probably my size, whatever, height, whatever, a little bit older than me, whatever. So I was like, all right, well, yeah, tell him we gonna get busy for this slot time. What we doing? Where we going? So again, I'm just learning the prison systems and all that. So the homies was like, all right, we gonna go upstairs in the back and fight in the cell. You know what I mean? Your cell, whoever's cell. We had cells in the Brooklyn house at that time. 2 tiers, if I'm not mistaken. Bottom tier, top tier. So on the 5th floor, I was to the left, whatever side that was, A, B, C, or whatever. I was on that left side, 5th floor, top tier. We went upstairs, you know what I mean, and we started shaking on the gallery right there in the back. I was in the back waiting for him. He came to the back, and let me explain something to you too. When I finish telling you the story, I'm a break it down about the jewels that was broken down to me by Hound Dog and Tut. They was both there for that fight. So, boom, we fighting. You know what I mean? Me and the dude, we shaking out. We young, wild, throwing punches everywhere. We shaking out. We rumbling, getting it on on the tier. So the fight balls over into the cell. So I kind of like, I don't know, we falling or whatever. So I landed on top of him on the bed. Like, so when I landed on top of him, you know how I'm trying to position my body so I could, and when you get on top of somebody, you go in. My homie had other plans, so he bit me. You know what I mean? He bit a hold of my eye, my left eye. I'll never forget. He had the top portion where my eyebrow is, and the lower portion bit in between his teeth, in his mouth, in like a pit bull lock. So if I couldn't pull away or nothing, because if I'd have pulled away, that meat paws would have been, he'd have ripped that off and it would have been inside of his mouth and shit. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, yo, this nigga fucking biting me. And I'm trying to punch him in his wrist. So a nigga Tut running the cell, and it was a 1-on-1, right? So it wasn't back then it was a 1-on-1 for the phone. Wasn't nobody jumping in. Win, lose, or draw, you had to fight for your own slot time of your own abilities. You know what I mean? Couldn't nobody help you. That's how it was at that particular time. So me and boy fighting, he biting me in my eye. He got my shit in the pit bull lock. My shit, my eyes bleeding and shit. The blood going his mouth and shit, going in my eye. I'm trying to punch him in his ribs and shit. Tuck runs in the room and like tries to grab me to pull me off him. But he like, yo, he biting. Get him off him. So I'm telling Tuck, he pulling me, but I'm like, yo, boy, stop pulling me, because as you pulling me, this nigga teeth is locking down harder, and you know what I mean, you about to pull my whole eyeball out of socket. So Hound Dog, I'll never forget this, homie. Hound Dog said, yo, Tuck, move, get out the way. So Hound Dog took his shirt off and shit and ran in the cell, and he jumped on the bed. Man, we fighting on the bed. He jumped on the bed in the midst of us and was saying something to the boy in Spanish, like I don't know, basically whatever. If you don't let him go, I'm a, you know what I mean, do something to you or whatever. So he ended up letting. So before he let me go, they was like, yo, Nas, when he let you go, don't swing. And Hound Dog was like, yo, Nas, don't swing, because I don't want you to hit me, bro. If you hit me and you, all of us gonna be in here rumbling. So I know you mad, but when he let you go, don't swing. Because I was on top of him still. So I'm like, all right. So he let me go, you know what I mean? They pulled me back, my shit leaking. So they like, yo, go, you know what I mean? Go close up the blood. I mean, stop the blood. You don't want the police to see the blood because they see you bleeding. You know what I mean? They taking you up out of it thinking somebody did something to you. So I went to my cell, stopped up the blood or whatever, tissue, and then I'm like, all right, now let's go. We back to round 2. You know what I mean? Because no, so now I know he a biter. So I'm like, all right, I know how I'm gonna deal with him a little bit differently. So I'm like, all right, told Hound, yo, go get him. Talk to him Spanish, tell him, come on, let's go round 2. Boy didn't want no more sauce. He like, nah. He told Hound, though, he said, nah, I don't want to fight him no more. I'm not fighting him because he don't quit. He's not gonna stop. So he's like, he went to another dude and was like, I want to fight him for his time. So the other dude saw me and him fight, saw how he bit me in his eye, and my eye, and the other dude was like, nah, I ain't fighting that wild nigga. He could have the phone time. So that was crazy. That I fought for my shit, got my eye bit up, but beat the motherfucker into not wanting to fight no more. But he was determined to get some phone time, so he went to the next dude that he thought was weak and was like, yo, I want to fight you. That dude bitched up, said, nah, I don't want to fight, and he got him some phone time. So the lesson that I learned in that situation right there was, because I'm still uptight, my eye, you know what I mean, I wanted to do something. I'm like, nah, he can't stay here. You know what I mean? Somebody give me a joint or something so I could blast him and get him the fuck out of here. And that's when Tuck and Hound Dog was like, yo, nah, homie. They sat me down and kind of broke it down, like in terms of, you know what I mean, how the shit go. Like, listen, homie, you did your thing. He bit you in your eye bleeding, all that, but technically you won because he quit and he didn't want to fight no more. So, like, at the end of the day, you know, on some respect shit, you know what I mean, we gotta let him stay because he stepped to somebody for their phone time and one fight. Like, that shit was too political for me. Like, I ain't get it, but I had to respect it because those was, you know what I mean, those were the older dudes that was running the house, you know what I mean, and you know, they had you know what I mean, situation on how they situated it, whatever. And like I said, I knew Tuck from the streets and shit. I respected him as like one of my old heads and shit, and Hound Dog was schooling me to shit. So they was basically like, yeah, bro, because it could have went any different way. You know, it was supposed to be a fair fight, a one-on-one fight, but you know, y'all fighting, but you know, homie could have had a razor or a joint somewhere and pulled it out. So like, that let me know, like, okay, so basically, even if it's a one-on-one, everything goes. Like, you know what I mean? In terms, I can bite in, joint pulling, kicking, and everything goes because I guess it's all about survival. You dig? You know what I mean? So everything, so that was a lesson for me right there. That very first fight that I had over the phone was a lesson. Like, all right, boy, when you in these situations, then you gotta bring your all and your best because everything goes, and you might not be on the winning side of one of these situations. So you want to make sure you do everything you can do to be on the winning side. You dig? First time I ever got bit in a fight, and I still got the scar to this day to prove it. I still got the scar above my left eyebrow. Yeah, he bit the shit out of me, homie. And he was growling, spit, salivating all out his mouth. He was making noise. He was shaking his head and shit like a whole dog. I couldn't believe that shit. That shit was crazy. He was not letting me go because I was fucking his ass up. And I guess his idea was like, if I let this man go and he get atop me freely with them arms, he gonna go to work. Yeah.
No.
He bit the shit out of me. He was like, it's not going down today, black man. He bit the shit out of me like a whole fucking dog. And I was like, man, if I ever see this shit anywhere, I'm tossing him. But they was like, nah, homie, you still won, even though he bit your eye, but you still won because he quit. So, take that as a victory and you got your phone time and leave it alone. And it was funny too, because he had the phone time like a little bit before me, so a couple times it like ran into right around my time and shit. And he had, when you get off the phone from your slot time, you hand the phone over to the next dude, that's coming, who slot time it is and shit. So maybe on one or two occasions and shit, he handed me the phone. So maybe like after about a couple weeks, a month, he probably handed me the phone and shit. And when he handed me the phone, he nodded his head, with a little smile on his face up and down, like in a respectful manner, because he didn't speak English. So I guess that was his way of acknowledging me, like, all right, here you go, homie, it's your time, I see you a stand-up dude, here you go, you deserve to be on this phone, like, do your thing. And, I would just take the phone or whatever. I still looked at him. I was a dude that like harbored beefs and shit. Like, you know what I mean? If I get into a beef with you and we gotta take it there, if I don't get off the way I feel I should have got off, then I'm gonna be harboring resentment and plotting on ways to sneak you and get you back. Like, you know what I mean? Cut your throat when you ain't looking, or stab you in your neck or the back of your head when you ain't paying attention. That's the type of, time that I was on back then at that age. And I had to, grow out of that shit. That was a crazy mentality, a crazy way of thinking, because, all that negative energy building up causes stress and, all sorts of ailments and crazy different shit to the body. So, but I stayed in the Brooklyn house for a few months fighting and doing all sorts of wild shit. I think I broke the TV on the 9th floor. Like when I was in, when you in jail, you stay, in the county jails anyway, you kind of stay current on what's going on in the streets and, through the phone. So I think I was on the 9th floor at the time, and I think I got the news back then that my brother had got shot and shit in Marcy Projects. My little brother had got shot in Marcy Projects, and I think, they said that. So you know how the dudes always get the information incorrect. I guess as it goes down the line. So it might start off with the first 1 or 2 people accurate, but by the time it gets to the 10th, 11th, 12th person, it trickles down to you, the story changes a lot. So I said my brother got shot in Marcy, and the story, the way it got to me was that he had died. You know what I mean? So when I heard that news, I just flipped out. I just lost it. I wigged out. That's what happened. I wigged out, and the TVs was kind of up, elevated high, and I was, probably going through my emotions, crying, spazzing out. I snatched the TV off the thing, slammed it, throwing shit around. I was just, going through it. That's all I knew on how to release that anger and frustration, because I'm in my mind, I'm like, damn, somebody just killed my little brother, and I'm not out there to, put that pain in. So somebody somewhere got to feel I was chasing dudes with the TV piece. Now, if I'm not mistaken, my man Bourne from Farragut was there. I think Squirrel and Tracy brother. I think he kind of like calmed me down, grabbed me up, and dragged me in the cell, like literally sat on top of me and shit. Probably was crying or whatever. And I guess he was trying to keep me in the cell so I wouldn't get knocked by the police. But I think the police was looking into the block, saw me spazzing, throwing TVs, chasing dudes, acting crazy. So the police came, opened the gate, came in there, and they took me out of there and shit. And I think they took me down to the psych ward. That's what they did. They put me in a psych psych floor, whatever the fuck that shit was. They put me on a psych floor where they took my laces to my sneakers, some wild shit, had me on some suicide watch to see if I was going to do something to myself or try to do something to somebody else. I think I stayed there a couple days or two, and I was beefing with the police and spazzing to get out of there because there wasn't nothing wrong with me. I wasn't crazy. They set me up to another floor, and I think I went to the 7th floor. I don't know. I can't remember. Probably had a fight over there. So, and then they moved me to another floor. But what happened was, I had every time you get into an incident, they give you a ticket, write you up, whatever, and they give you, if they found you guilty of the incident, the allegations that they charged with in the incident report, you know what I mean, you get time. So they was giving me big time every time that I was catching all these tickets, but I never went to the big. So it was just accumulating. So one day they just packed me up and sent me on a draft, and I was downstairs in the pen going to the they said we was going on an overload to Rikers Island. So all the dudes, it was all the dudes it was big time. It was a bunch of us. It was myself, it was Hound Dog. It was a bunch of dudes that had accumulated bing time. They didn't have no room in the bing in the Brooklyn house, which is what they was telling us. So they was sending us to Rikers Island, and then, you know, we would go to the bing once we get to Rikers Island, to whatever respective prison we was going to. So we got to Rikers Island. So I don't know, it's about 5, 6 of us. I couldn't remember everybody. The overload, I remember we was down in the pen. I remember seeing Allah Just in the pen. I remember Allah Just trying to cut a dude in the face while we was in the pen and shit. That shit was crazy. Then I remember going on the bus, and we went in the building. They took us, you know, they was taking dudes, dropping dudes off at a bunch of other buildings. But all the dudes that came from the Brooklyn house with me, we all went to HDM, and this shit was crazy. So we in HDM waiting to get processed and shit to you know, to get processed into the HDM system, and then waiting to go to the bank. So like I said, it was a bunch of us. It was 7 of us, 7, 8, 9 of us maybe, that went from the Brooklyn house all to HDM. So we was all in the bullpens. So now I'm listening to the stories of the dudes. They get no hype, like, yo, this is HDM, son. It get crazy in here. Niggas get killed in here on the regular. So, you know, you gotta be on your A game and all that. Don't take no shorts. Don't let nobody disrespect you. You know what I mean? Anybody try to play with you, you know what I mean? You gotta up it, turn it up. So, you know, I'm like, all right. So I'm thinking of, in terms of, when I get out the bank, when I get the population, how I was supposed to carry it. But for whatever reason, homie, I don't know whatever reason it was, all 7 of us that was in the that was waiting to get processed to go to the bank, it might have been more of us, they didn't send us to the bank. They put us all in population in HDN. They said, yo, y'all get this set up, whatever, y'all go in the population. So they spread us out. I think it was 8, 9. If it was 7, 8, 9 of us, some of us went to 7 block, and then some of us went to 8 block. Right, odd, even. In HDM, they had the size 1, 3. No, 1 block was the big, so they had 3, 5, and 7 on one side of the corridor, that long hallway. Then on the other side, they had 2, 4, 6, and 8. Yeah, 2, 4, 6, and 8, 3, 5, 7, 1 block. I believe at the time, if I'm not mistaken, 1A and 1B was the bay. So yeah, when I got the HDM, boy, that was a whole different experience right there, lads. That HDM was different. Like, house of detention for men. You know what I mean? Shout out to all the cats that ever been in HDM, man. House of detention for men on Rikers Island, and made it up out that piece, because that was real prison right there, lad.
AKA hope you don't get murdered.
Oh, that's what they called it? That was another name which y'all called it later on?
Hell yeah. I was in HDM when it closed. It closed down in 99 because of the riot that popped off in my crib in 5 block, where, bro from Queens got stabbed and almost killed. You feel what I'm saying? And then for some reason the cells just, they was old, man. The cells just stopped. They used to have to manually open the cells with the whole cables broke and none of the cells would close, and they had to put us back in that shit after the riot. So we had to sleep in the bullpens, and then they couldn't fix the cells. They had to shut the whole HDM down. They just split everybody up and sent people to different buildings.
Hey, yo, if you can't live without this type of content, feel free to send me a Cash App donation. You're